The wind moved like a living thing across the plains of Arendor. It swept past the low hills and the glowing grasses, bending them gently under its invisible hand. The sun, pale and enormous, was sinking behind jagged cliffs in the distance, painting the sky in shades of pink, gold, and violet. Elias Kane, a man known in his small settlement as the Quiet Rancher, walked slowly among his herd. His boots made soft impressions in the pale dirt, and the bioluminescent creatures grazing nearby blinked like stars in response to his movements. Elias was not a man of many words. Most days, he spoke only when necessary, preferring the company of the land and his animals to the chatter of humans. He liked the quiet, the rhythm of routine, the certainty of work under the open sky. But today, as the wind whispered through the tall grasses, something was different. Something small, fragile, and yet unmistakable, disturbed the usual calm. "Sir?" The voice was barely audible over the wind. Elias froze. It was soft, trembling, almost hesitant, but clear enough to pierce the emptiness of the plains. He scanned the horizon. There was no one, only the rolling hills and the glowing creatures. Then he saw her. A young woman, her frame small and shivering, stood near the edge of the grazing field. Her clothing was worn and patched, clearly designed more for function than style. Her hair was tangled from travel, and her eyes, wide with fear or wonder, or perhaps both, looked directly at him. She took a cautious step forward. "Sir, may I shelter beneath your coat?" she whispered. Elias's heart, though rarely stirred by strangers, skipped a beat. He had never been asked something like this. It was not the manner of most visitors on Arendor. Normally, travelers were rare and official, or merchants with loud carts and sharper tongues. This woman carried nothing but herself and a quiet desperation that made the wind seem even colder. He hesitated. For a long moment, he simply stared at her, unsure if he should speak, move, or remain still. The sun dipped lower, and the shadows of the cliffs stretched like long fingers across the field. The bioluminescent herd blinked more rapidly, their soft lights reflecting the tension in the air. Elias finally nodded slowly. "Under my coat?" "Then," he said in his calm, measured voice. The young woman's face lit up, not with joy, but with relief so deep it almost shook her. She moved closer and stepped under the long, heavy coat Elias carried to protect himself from the cold nights. The coat was rough, smelling faintly of earth and sweat, but it offered warmth enough to stop her shivering. "Thank you," she whispered again, her voice almost lost in the wind. Elias said nothing. He was not used to sudden company, and yet something about her presence demanded his attention. He adjusted the coat slightly, ensuring she was safe from the cold. They began walking slowly toward his small home on the ridge, the soft hum of the bioluminescent herd behind them like a quiet choir. "Where did you come from?" Elias asked after some time, keeping his voice neutral but steady. The young woman hesitated, her eyes downcast. "From the colony," she said finally. "Far away. I was escaping. I didn't know where to go." Her words were halting, each one carrying a weight that suggested more than she said. Elias's mind began to fill with questions. The colonies were supposed to be safe. They were supposed to be centers of technology, of order, of civilization. And yet, here she was, alone and frightened, walking through his quiet fields. "I see," he said carefully. "And this? Escape? Why here? To the plains?" The woman looked up at him, her eyes reflecting the twilight. "I don't know," she admitted. "I only knew I had to leave. I heard about this world, that it was quiet and free." Elias understood more than he let on. The plains of Arendor were indeed quiet and free. That was why he had stayed. Why he had chosen isolation over comfort, solitude over crowding. And yet, the presence of another human so fragile, so different, brought an unfamiliar tension, one that made his chest feel tight and alert. They continued walking in silence. The wind carried whispers from the distant cliffs, and the bioluminescent creature's lights pulsed softly, as though responding to the strange rhythm of the two humans passing through. Every so often, the woman would glance up at Elias, her eyes full of questions, but she did not speak, unless he asked. Finally, the small structure of his home came into view. A simple building made of local stone and timber, designed to withstand both wind and cold. Elias opened the door and gestured for her to enter. She hesitated, then stepped inside, shaking slightly from the cold and from exhaustion. Inside, the house smelled of earth, wood, and faint smoke from a small hearth. Elias lit a fire, the flames casting dancing shadows across the walls. The woman sat near it, hands stretched toward the warmth, as if trying to absorb not just heat, but safety itself. "I'm Elias," he said finally, sitting on a chair opposite her. "And you are?" "Lyra," she replied softly. "Lyra Talon," he nodded. The name was unfamiliar, yet there was something in her tone, something carefully measured that suggested intelligence and experience, despite her obvious vulnerability. "What happened at the colony?" he asked, choosing his words with care. Lyra's hands clenched slightly, and she looked into the fire. "There was a failure. Machines, systems. I don't know all the details, but people were in danger, and I couldn't stay. I just ran." Elias studied her. He had spent years learning to read subtle signs. The way a creature shifted when nervous, the slight tremble in a human hand, the way eyes avoided or sought light. Lyra was telling the truth, at least part of it. She was hiding something, yes, but not out of malice. Only necessity. "Then you made it here," he said softly. "Safe for now." Lyra nodded, her eyes meeting his. "Safe. For now," she echoed. There was a small, almost sad smile on her lips, and Elias felt a pang of concern he hadn't experienced in years. They ate a simple meal together, bread and some dried fruit, sharing the quiet of the room. Elias spoke little, asking only essential questions. Lyra answered cautiously, revealing small pieces of her story. She spoke of the colony's advanced machines, the strange failures that no one could fully explain, and of the device she carried, small, humming, and glowing faintly. Elias noticed it when she set it on the table. It was a curious thing, unlike any technology he had ever seen. It pulsed gently, almost like it had a heartbeat of its own. "What is this?" he asked, unable to hide his curiosity. Lyra's eyes met his, sharp and serious now. I don't fully know. It's part of what I was working on at the colony. But it responds to life. It can detect patterns in the world that humans haven't mapped yet." Elias felt a strange thrill in his chest. This was beyond anything he had imagined. Here, in his quiet, lonely home, a fragment of the vast universe had arrived on his table, and somehow, he had been chosen, by circumstance or fate, to witness it. For a long time, they sat in silence, watching the fire, listening to the wind, and feeling the quiet presence of the glowing herd through the windows. The night stretched on, full of possibilities that neither of them yet understood. Elias realized that nothing would be the same again. The quiet plains, the slow rhythm of life he had cherished for so long, were about to be touched by something extraordinary, and the first step, he knew, was simple. He had given shelter to a stranger, and in doing so, he had opened a door to a future that stretched far beyond the horizon. Lyra leaned slightly closer under his coat again, the warmth spreading from the fire and from his quiet presence. "Thank you, Elias," she whispered. Elias said nothing. He only nodded, feeling the weight of her trust. The wind continued to whistle outside, but inside the small home, there was a sense of calm, a fragile, precious calm that marked the beginning of something new. And for the first time in years, Elias Kane allowed himself to wonder What might come next? The morning on Arendor arrived quietly, with the pale sun spilling soft light across the glowing plains. Elias woke to the gentle hum of the bioluminescent herd outside. He moved slowly, the familiar rhythm of his daily chores bringing him comfort. Yet the memory of the young woman, Lyra, sitting under his coat by the fire the night before, lingered in his mind. He found her awake in the small corner of the house where she had slept, staring at the small device she had set on the table. It pulsed faintly, casting soft blue light across her face. She had not moved since dawn. "Good morning," Elias said, his voice calm but steady. Lyra jumped slightly, then smiled weakly. "Good morning," she replied. She rubbed her hands together, trying to warm them. The coat he had lent her the night before had kept her safe from the cold, but the chill of the plains still lingered in her bones. "Are you hungry?" Elias asked. He moved to the small pantry and fetched some bread, a few pieces of dried fruit, and a cup of warm tea. Lyra shook her head, her attention fixed on the device. I can eat later. I need to figure this out first." Elias raised an eyebrow. "Figure what out?" She hesitated, then spoke. "The device. It's strange. It responds to life, to patterns. I don't fully understand it. Back at the colony, I only got as far as testing it in controlled conditions. Out here, it behaves differently." Elias studied her for a moment. His life had always been simple: work, land, animals. Technology beyond the basics he used to manage his ranch was rare and often confusing. And yet, there was something about this device and about Lyra that made him pay attention in a way he had not done for years. He moved closer, placing a hand on the table near the device. "Show me," he said. Lyra nodded, her fingers brushing against the small humming object. She pressed a panel on its side, and the soft glow brightened, sending beams of light that danced across the walls. The room filled with patterns, lines, dots, and curves that moved as though alive. The shapes shifted and changed, tracing paths and connections that Elias could not fully comprehend. "It reacts to the living world," Lyra explained. "To humans, animals, plants, everything that has life energy. I think it can map patterns we can't even see yet." Elias leaned back in his chair, impressed despite himself. He had never seen technology like this, but what fascinated him more was the way Lyra spoke, careful, precise, yet full of wonder. As though she too was only beginning to understand what the device could do. "Can it predict things?" he asked cautiously. Lyra's eyes lit up. "Not exactly predict, but it can show connections. It can help you see paths, roots, relationships. I think it could even help humans explore safely, beyond what we know now. But it needs guidance, and someone grounded, someone used to understanding living things, not just machines." Elias felt a strange thrill. He had spent years observing his herd, reading subtle signs in the environment, understanding life through patience and careful attention. Could it be that his quiet, ordinary life had prepared him to help unlock something extraordinary? They spent the morning testing the device. Lyra moved it near the glowing herd, and to Elias's amazement, the creature's lights pulsed in rhythm with the device. Lines of light formed between them, mapping paths across the field. The device responded not just to the animals but to Elias himself as he walked among them. Every step, every movement, shifted the patterns slightly, creating a living map of their world. "It's incredible," Elias whispered. He rarely used words like that, but he could not contain his awe. Lyra smiled, though her expression was still serious. "It's more than that," she said. "If we understand it, it could connect humans to worlds we haven't yet reached. Worlds beyond the colony, beyond known systems. But it's delicate. One wrong move, and we could misread it entirely." Elias nodded, thinking carefully. "Then we need patience. And careful observation. Not just rushing." Lyra looked at him, her eyes wide with admiration and relief. You understand." Most people wouldn't even try. They'd see it as just a machine, not something alive. Elias shrugged slightly. I've always watched for life, whether it's a herd, a plant, or the wind. I've learned to listen to the world. I've learned to listen to the world. This wed. I've learned to listen. Those for giver. Those for session. I've learned to listen to the world. They spent the rest of the morning and early afternoon exploring the device's reactions. They moved it over small plants, over the soil, and even near the rocks around the ranch. Every interaction produced subtle changes in the patterns. Elias noticed that the device seemed to prefer harmony. Smooth, natural patterns appeared when life was thriving. Chaotic, erratic pulses appeared when it sensed stress or imbalance. It's alive. In a way, he said finally. Lyra nodded. I think it is. It's more than a machine. It senses. It responds. But it also learns. And it can guide humans. If we know how to listen. By mid-afternoon, Elias realized he was beginning to see patterns in the device's patterns. The movement of the herd, the sway of the grasses, even the small winds across the plains, all of it seemed to create a language he could almost understand. It was as if the world itself was speaking, and the device was the translator. You have a gift, Lyra said softly. I didn't think someone like you could help me. Crew. Elias shook his head. I'm just quiet. I watch. I notice. That's all. No, Lyra said firmly. It's more than that. You connect with life naturally. You understand the world around you without needing instructions or diagrams. That's exactly what this device needs. The sun began to set again, casting long shadows across the plains. Elias and Lyra moved back toward the house, the device now glowing softly between them. There was a silence, comfortable but full of anticipation. Both felt that something extraordinary was beginning, though neither could yet see the full path. Inside, they shared a simple meal. Lyra finally ate, nibbling bread and fruit, her hands still trembling slightly from the excitement of discovery. Elias watched her, feeling a sense of responsibility he had never experienced before. She was a stranger, yes, but she was also a key to something far greater than either of them could yet imagine. As night fell, Lyra set the device near the fire again. It pulsed softly, almost like a heartbeat, illuminating the small room with gentle blue light. Elias sat nearby, his mind turning over possibilities. Tomorrow, Lyra said, I want to explore more of the plains with it. See how it reacts to the world beyond the ranch. The maps, the patterns they might change. They might even show us new routes, new connections. Elias nodded. We'll go together. But carefully. The world here is vast, and the plains are not always gentle. We'll need patience. Lyra smiled, a hint of excitement lighting her tired face. As the fire crackled softly, Elias realized something remarkable. He had spent years in quiet solitude, thinking his life simple and ordinary. But in reality, he had been preparing, without knowing it, for this very moment. His skills, his patience, his connection to life itself, they were exactly what Lyra and the device needed, and the thought filled him with a strange, exhilarating hope. For the first time, Elias Kane felt that his quiet world was about to expand far beyond the horizon, not through conflict, not through force, but through curiosity, understanding, and the simple power of human connection with life itself. Lyra leaned back, tired but determined, her eyes reflecting the soft glow of the device. Thank you, she whispered again. Elias smiled faintly, the weight of the moment pressing gently on him. We're just getting started, he said. Outside, the plains stretched endlessly, quiet and alive. And for the first time, both Elias and Lyra could see that the universe was not so distant, nor humanity so small, as they had once believed. The first steps toward something extraordinary were already underway, and the wind carried their shared hope across the glowing grasses, across the plains, and toward the endless stars. The next morning on Arendor was crisp and bright. The pale sun stretched its light across the plains, making the bioluminescent herd shimmer faintly even in daylight. Elias woke early, as always, listening to the wind brush over the grasses. Today felt different. There was an energy in the air, subtle but unmistakable, as if the world itself was waiting for something. Lyra was already awake, sitting cross-legged on the floor near the small device. She had a notebook open, filled with sketches of patterns, lines, and symbols that shifted under the light. Her eyes were focused, calculating, but there was a glimmer of excitement in them. "Morning," Elias said softly. He did not want to disturb her, but he needed to speak. "Good morning," Lyra replied, barely looking up. "I think I've figured something new." Elias stepped closer. The device was pulsing gently, more rhythmically than before, as if it had sensed his presence. "Show me," he said. She tapped a panel, and the light intensified. Lines and dots emerged in the air, forming a three-dimensional map. It was intricate, complex, and alive. Patterns shifted as Elias moved closer or stepped back. Each movement seemed to create new connections between points, like invisible threads stretching across the room. "I think," Lyra began, "that it can do more than map life on this planet. Look." She pressed a small button, and the map expanded beyond the confines of the room, showing faint outlines of other worlds, distant systems, and potential pathways between them. Elias's eyes widened. He had seen the stars at night, studied the skies, and imagined the vastness of space. But this was different. The device was not just showing distant points, it was suggesting paths, connections that humans had never traveled. "Is this possible?" he whispered. Lyra nodded. "I don't know yet." Back at the colony, the device could only do small tests. Out here, with life, with a living environment, it's reacting differently. It's learning, and it's showing us something extraordinary. Elias felt a mixture of awe and responsibility. Here, in his quiet home, a tool had appeared that could expand humanity's reach far beyond the stars. And yet, it relied on him as much as it relied on Lyra. His knowledge of life, his patience, his ability to observe patterns, these were as important as any technical skill. "We need to test it," he said finally. "Carefully. Slowly. Understand what it can do." Lyra smiled, a mix of relief and excitement. "Exactly. And I think the herd might be the key." Elias raised an eyebrow. "The herd?" "The creatures," Lyra explained. "They are in perfect harmony with this environment. Their energy, their movement, the device responds to it. If we can observe patterns in their behavior, we might understand how to guide it more accurately." They stepped outside. The plains stretched endlessly, glowing softly as the bioluminescent herd moved among the grasses. Elias and Lyra positioned the device in the middle of the field. As the creatures walked around it, the device pulsed and sent lines of light across the air. The lines formed patterns that resembled the constellations, but they also linked to points closer to the ground, tracing routes across the planet. "It's like it's speaking," Elias murmured. Lyra nodded. "It is. But it doesn't speak in words. It speaks in connections, relationships, movements. It shows how life, energy, and the world interact. If we understand these patterns, we can understand more than maps. We can understand the rules of life itself, the paths that lead to safety, growth, and discovery." Elias stepped carefully among the herd, moving in harmony with their paths. As he walked, the lines in the air shifted, becoming smoother, more coherent. The device pulsed faster, almost eagerly, and the patterns expanded outward, reaching further across the plains. "It responds to intuition," Lyra said. "To your understanding of life. That's why I need you. Someone grounded, someone patient. The device, it trusts what you know." Elias felt a strange pride. He had lived a quiet life, unnoticed, unremarkable. And yet here, his skills, His observation, his quiet attention to detail were helping reveal something extraordinary. They spent the day experimenting. They moved the device near water sources, rocks, and even the smallest plants. Observing how the patterns shifted, Lyra took notes, Elias guided movements, and the herd's energy interacted with the device in ways neither fully understood. By afternoon, they noticed a change. The device began forming connections that did not just map their world, but suggested pathways beyond Arendor. Small, glowing trails stretched outward in the patterns, hinting at other habitable planets and safe travel routes. "Do you see that?" Lyra asked, pointing to one line. "It's showing a route. Not just a map, but a safe way to move through the stars, avoiding dangers that humans haven't even measured yet." Elias felt a rush of amazement. The quiet plains, the herd, and his own understanding of life were now linked to the possibilities of human expansion into the universe. He had never imagined his simple life could matter on such a scale. "It's beautiful," he said. Lyra smiled. "Yes, but it's delicate. If we misstep, the patterns could become confused. The device learns, but it also needs guidance. That's why we must proceed carefully." Elias nodded, understanding the responsibility. This was not just a machine or a tool, it was a living guide. And they were its stewards. As the sun began to set, they returned to the house, the device still pulsing softly. Elias felt a strange mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. Today, they had taken the first real step toward understanding its potential. But tomorrow could be even more remarkable. Over dinner, Lyra explained more about her work at the colony. She had been part of a research team exploring ways to map life energy across worlds, to find connections that could guide human exploration. The device had been her creation, or rather, her co-creation with the colony's AI, but it had never worked fully until now, until it sensed life in harmony with a planet, not just controlled lab conditions. "You've created something extraordinary," Elias said quietly. "No," Lyra replied, shaking her head. "It's not me. It's life. And now, with you, it has a chance to be more than either of us imagined." They spent the evening watching the devices glow, seeing the lines stretch across the room, mapping their world in ways that felt alive. Elias realized that life, patience, and observation skills, often overlooked in a world focused on speed and efficiency, were now the most valuable tools they had. As night fell, Lyra leaned slightly under the warmth of his coat again. "Tomorrow," she whispered, "we begin the real test. We take it further, beyond the ranch, beyond the herd. We see what it can truly do." Elias nodded, feeling a sense of anticipation and calm. The world outside was quiet, glowing, alive, and inside, a new connection had formed, not just between humans and technology, but between humans and the possibilities of life itself. For the first time, Elias Kane understood that his quiet, ordinary life was not ordinary at all. It had prepared him for this moment, for this partnership, for the chance to help guide humanity toward a future full of discovery and wonder. Outside, the plains stretched endlessly under the stars, and somewhere beyond the horizon, the universe waited, full of connections, pathways, and life. And Elias and Lyra were ready to follow where it led. The morning air on Arendor was cool and crisp, carrying a hint of the plains' wild energy. Elias woke before dawn, his senses tuned to the rhythm of the land. The bioluminescent herd moved quietly among the grasses, their soft glow fading as the sun began to rise. Today felt different. There was a tension in the air, not unpleasant, but electric, as if the planet itself was holding its breath. Lyra was already awake, seated on the floor near the small device. Her eyes shone with focus, and her fingers moved deftly over its panels, adjusting settings and observing the lines of light that streamed into the air. "Are you ready?" Elias asked, stepping closer. Lyra nodded. "We're ready. Today, we take it beyond the ranch. We see what it can do in the wild." Elias felt a thrill. The past days had been about observation and testing, But now they would truly experiment. Today, they would see if the device could guide them, if it could reveal something beyond the immediate world they knew. They stepped outside, carrying the device carefully. The herd followed at a distance, curious but calm. Elias placed the device on a flat rock, ensuring it had a stable position. Lyra adjusted its panels, and soon the air around them was alive with glowing lines, twisting and connecting points across the landscape. "This is it," Lyra whispered. "The first real test." Elias knelt, observing the patterns closely. The lines moved, almost as if alive, reaching toward hills, valleys, and streams that stretched beyond their ranch. Some lines shimmered faintly, while others pulsed steadily, highlighting paths that seemed safe. "It's guiding us," Elias said quietly. "It's showing the way." Lyra nodded. "Yes, but it's more than that. Look at how it responds to the herd." She gestured to the creatures grazing nearby. As they moved, the lines shifted, creating new paths, linking points in ways that neither of them fully understood. Elias realized something extraordinary. The device did not just follow life, it learned from it. It reacted to patterns of movement, energy, and behavior, adapting its guidance as the world changed. In essence, it was alive in a way he had never imagined, a partner rather than a tool. "Let's test it further," Lyra said. "We move, follow the lines." They began walking, stepping carefully along the illuminated paths. The lines shifted with each movement, creating new trails and suggesting directions. The plains were unfamiliar in daylight, yet the device seemed to know every subtle dip and rise, every hidden rock and stream. It guided them safely, almost intuitively. "This is incredible," Elias said. "It's like the world itself is speaking to us." Lyra smiled, though her expression was serious. "It is. And it's teaching us how to listen." They walked for hours, moving across the plains, observing how the device interacted with the land. The glowing herd followed nearby, their presence influencing the patterns. The device seemed to value harmony, rewarding careful observation and movement with smoother, more coherent lines. When they moved recklessly or disturbed the herd, the patterns became jagged, chaotic, warning them of imbalance. Elias realized that this was a lesson not just in navigation, but in understanding life itself. The device was teaching them to respect the world, to move with awareness and patience. By midday, they reached a small grove of alien trees, their leaves shimmering faintly in the sunlight. The device pulsed more rapidly here, sending lines upward and outward, creating a three-dimensional map of the grove and the surrounding hills. Elias and Lyra studied it carefully, noting how the paths suggested routes beyond their immediate vision, routes that could lead to hidden valleys, safe streams, and places of shelter. "This is beyond mapping," Elias said. "It's showing potential, possibilities, safe ways to explore, to grow." Lyra nodded. "Exactly. And it's all grounded in life. Not just technology, but observation, patience, and understanding. That's why humans can guide it. We are part of the world it responds to." As they rested near the grove, Elias reflected on the significance. Here, on a quiet planet, they held a device that could guide humanity safely across worlds, not through force or machinery alone, but through connection with life itself. The implications were staggering. "We should test one more thing," Lyra said after a while. "The device needs a human signature to activate fully. I think it needs someone who understands life, who can blend intuition with observation." Elias's heart skipped a beat. He had spent years learning to read subtle signs in animals, plants, and the wind. Could it be that his quiet life had prepared him for this exact moment? "You want me to do what?" he asked carefully. Lyra explained that the device required a final step, a person to step into its field, allowing it to measure their connection to life and the environment. It would not harm him, but it would rely on his awareness, intuition, and patience. Elias nodded slowly. I'll do it. He stepped into the device's field, feeling the faint hum against his skin. The glowing lines wrapped around him like threads of light, connecting him to the herd, the trees, the grasses, and even the soil beneath his feet. He moved slowly, deliberately, observing the world around him. Every step, every breath, every glance influenced the patterns. Lyra watched intently, adjusting the device as needed. The lines pulsed faster, forming coherent pathways that reached beyond the plains, beyond the planet, toward distant stars. Elias felt a deep connection, a sense of harmony with the world, as though he and the device were one with the living planet. "Look," Lyra whispered. "It's fully activating." The lines in the air expanded, forming intricate maps of distant worlds, safe paths, and possibilities for human travel. The device pulsed with a steady rhythm, as if acknowledging their success. For the first time, the full potential of their partnership was clear. Elias stepped back, breathing deeply. "It worked," he said. "The device. It's alive. And it trusts us." Lyra smiled, a mixture of relief and awe. "Yes. And now, we can begin to understand what it truly wants to show us. This is just the beginning." They spent the rest of the day exploring further, testing new routes, and observing how the device responded to different environments. Each experiment revealed new possibilities, new connections, and new lessons about patience, observation, and harmony with life. By evening, they returned to the ranch, exhausted but exhilarated. The device pulsed gently, casting soft light across the room. Elias realized that today had been more than a test. It had been a revelation. The quiet life he had led, the patience and understanding he had cultivated, had prepared him to unlock something extraordinary. Lyra leaned back, her eyes reflecting the device's glow. "Tomorrow," she said softly, "we explore further. Beyond the familiar plains, we see what it can truly reveal about the universe." Elias nodded, feeling a deep sense of purpose. For the first time, he understood that human intuition, patience, and connection with life were as important as any machine or technology. Together, they had unlocked a tool that could guide humanity safely and wisely, not through force, but through understanding. Outside, the plains stretched endlessly, glowing softly under the stars. The herd moved quietly among the grasses, their lights pulsing in rhythm with the device. And for the first time, Elias Kane felt the full weight and wonder of what they had begun, a journey that could connect humanity to the stars, guided by wisdom, observation, and the quiet strength of human insight. As the night deepened, Elias looked out at the horizon. Somewhere beyond the plains, beyond the hills, the universe waited, and with Lyra and the device, he knew that humanity could step forward with care, curiosity, and hope. The first test had succeeded, and tomorrow, the adventure would truly begin. The first light of dawn painted the plains of Arendor in soft gold and pink. The bioluminescent herd, now fully awake, shimmered faintly even in daylight, their glow blending with the sun's gentle warmth. Elias Kane stood near the edge of the ridge, the device at his side, feeling a strange mixture of anticipation and calm. Today would be the day that the device revealed its full potential. Lyra emerged from the small house, carrying her notebook filled with sketches and observations. Her eyes were bright with excitement, and her steps were quick yet careful. "Are you ready?" she asked. Elias nodded. "As ready as I'll ever be." The plains stretched endlessly before them, full of life, patterns, and possibilities. Elias and Lyra set the device on a flat stone near the ridge. Its soft blue glow pulsed, almost as if sensing the energy of the world around it. "This is it," Lyra whispered. "The final step. We see the full map, the real connections, and we understand what it wants us to know." Elias watched the device carefully. As he stepped closer, the lines of light extended into the air, forming intricate patterns that stretched beyond the ridge, across valleys, rivers, and hills. The glowing trails were no longer confined to Arendor. They reached far into space, mapping distant worlds and safe routes that humans had never traveled. "It's magnificent," Elias said softly. He had seen the device before, but now it was different, alive in a way that seemed almost conscious, aware of life, aware of them. Lyra nodded. It responds to harmony, to understanding, to patience. Today, we see what it can truly do. Elias stepped into the field of light, allowing the device to sense him fully. As he moved, the lines shifted and pulsed, connecting his presence with the herd, the land, and the distant points in space. The patterns expanded, revealing not only paths but possibilities, routes that could guide humanity safely to new worlds, connections that promised growth, learning, and understanding. It's showing us everything, Lyra said. Her voice trembled with awe. Not just maps, paths, lessons, ways to explore, responsibly. Elias felt a deep sense of purpose. For years, he had thought his quiet life was insignificant. But now, he realized that the patience, observation, and care he had cultivated were exactly what humanity needed to unlock the potential of this extraordinary technology. Hours passed as they studied the patterns, testing, observing, and learning. The device responded to every step, every decision, every moment of awareness. The herd moved nearby, their presence integral to the harmony of the patterns. Elias and Lyra understood that the device was not just a tool, it was a teacher, a guide, and a bridge between humanity and the universe. At one point, a faint shimmer appeared in the distance, a glowing trail that stretched far beyond the planet. Elias and Lyra followed the line, observing how it connected points in space with patterns grounded in life and energy. It was as though the device was saying, "This is the way, but only if you move with understanding." "It's beautiful," Elias said. "And it's perfect. Not because it's powerful, but because it teaches us to be careful, to observe, to connect." Lyra smiled. "Yes. That's why it chose us, Elias. Not just the technology, but the wisdom we bring. We are the balance between life and learning. That's what it needs." By midday, they had traced countless routes, linking Arendor's plains to distant stars, mapping safe passages, and revealing new opportunities for human exploration. The device pulsed with steady light, almost as if it were alive, aware of the progress they had made. Elias realized that this moment was bigger than either of them. Humanity had long dreamed of reaching the stars, but this was the first time that a connection between life, observation, and technology had created a safe and meaningful path. It was not about conquest or speed. It was about understanding, respect, and ingenuity. As they rested near a small grove, Elias reflected on the journey that had brought them here. A quiet rancher, a shivering young woman, and a device that responded to life itself together. They had begun to unlock something extraordinary. "Do you understand what this means?" Lyra asked softly, her eyes shining with wonder. Elias nodded. "It means humans don't just need technology. We need patience, observation, and respect for life. Those are the skills that make us truly capable." Lyra leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. "And now, we can share this. Not just for us, but for everyone. Humans can explore responsibly, safely, and wisely." The sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant shades of pink and gold. The plains glowed, and the device's patterns reflected the last rays of sunlight. Elias and Lyra watched in silence, feeling a profound sense of connection not just to each other, but to the world, the herd, and the possibilities that lay beyond the horizon. As night fell, they returned to the small house, the device pulsing gently in the corner. Elias placed it carefully on the table, observing the soft lines of light that danced across the walls. Lyra sat beside him, her eyes reflecting the glow. "You've changed everything," she said softly. "Your quiet life. It was never ordinary. It prepared you for this." Elias smiled faintly. "And you brought it here. To life. We did it together." They shared a simple meal, talking quietly about what they had seen and what the future might hold. The device hummed softly, almost as if acknowledging their understanding and cooperation. Later, Elias stepped outside once more. The night sky stretched endlessly, stars twinkling with possibilities. He thought about the paths the device had revealed, the safe routes to new worlds, and the lessons they had learned. Humans had always dreamed of reaching the stars, but now, for the first time, it was possible not just through machines, but through wisdom, patience, and harmony with life. Lyra joined him, wrapping her coat around her shoulders. "It's beautiful, isn't it?" she asked. Elias nodded. "Yes. And it's just the beginning. Tomorrow, and every day after, we continue. We learn. We explore. And we do it with care." They stood together, watching the glowing plains, the soft movement of the herd, and the stars beyond. For the first time, the future felt close, tangible, and full of hope. The device had shown them the way, but it was humanity's courage, ingenuity, and connection to life that would guide the journey. As they gazed at the horizon, Elias felt a profound sense of peace. The quiet rancher, once content with solitude, now stood at the edge of a new era. With Lyra and the device, he knew that humans could reach the stars. Not through force or haste, but through wisdom, patience, and understanding. The plains whispered in the night wind, and the stars twinkled like silent witnesses. A new dawn was coming, not just for Arendor, but for humanity. And Elias Kane, quiet rancher turned pioneer, felt ready to meet it. The device pulsed once more, sending glowing lines into the night sky. Elias and Lyra watched in awe, knowing that the universe, vast and full of possibilities, awaited their steps. And together, they would follow the paths it revealed, careful, curious, and full of hope. Humanity's journey into the stars had begun, guided not by force or technology alone, but by the quiet strength, patience, and ingenuity that only humans could provide. And in that moment, under the glow of Arendor's plains and the light of distant worlds, Elias Kane smiled, knowing that the quietest life could spark the greatest adventures.